Hello, my name is Alex. I'm a member of the oXygen team, and in the next presentation I'm going to show to you how even less technical people can find an XML editing experience as being both productive and a pleasant one. So my presentation is structured into two separate parts. The first part focuses on the user's perspective, while the second part tackles the technical aspects needed to add the same level of support to any custom XML vocabulary. So for the user perspective, I have prepared two examples. The first one is a travel guide. Actually, it's one of the sample files available in oXygen. And it presents the beautiful island of Santorini, Greece. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to switch to author mode. Now, how many of you are familiar with the author mode in oXygen? Quite a few. Just a few words then. So the author mode is intended to help the user focus on the XML semantics, while oXygen automatically handles the layout and formatting. And actually, for this, all of this, oXygen uses CSS rules, so all for the layout. So if you want your own document to look like this, you just write a couple of CSS rules and that's it. Of course, there's more to the author mode than just the CSS, but that's just that. It's what we need to know to move forward with my presentation. So it looks a lot easier to edit and concentrate on the content, but there are still a couple of burdens that we're going to identify together. So first of all, this information element right here, it looks empty, but it actually has a couple of important attributes, and if you want to edit these attributes, you have to go into the attributes panel over here, so it's a bit destructive. So my question is, wouldn't it be a lot easier if you could just edit these attributes right in the content of the document? As we move down, we notice the same problem with the plane schedule and with the ferry schedule. We have here a point of interest. Now, each point of interest has a photograph. Again, this photograph is given by an attribute value. So my question this time is, wouldn't it be easier if I could just browse for the photo? Ideally, right here in the content. I also have another element here, the how to get there. It has an attribute with a multiple value. This resolution is a killer. So it's the one right here. And wouldn't it be easier if I could just have a couple of checkboxes with each item and I could just check the ones that apply? Wouldn't that be a lot faster? So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to change the CSS that oXygen uses to render this document, and to do that I'll go to the toolbar on this styles button, and from the pop-up I select the form control style sheet. Okay, so now let's see what happened. First, the information element. I'm now able to edit its attributes right here in the content. I can edit the population using a text field. Also, I have a text field for the area. The currency, for the currency, I have a combo box, and just as I select a different entry, the document is automatically updated, as you can notice in the attributes view. Okay, I'll just maximize again probably I'll be doing this a lot. Okay, so as we move down, we notice this same combo boxes being used for the weather and temperature table. The plane schedule also uses combo boxes and text fields. The ferry schedule uses a different type of form control. It's a pop-up. If I just click and I select a different company. Here we have a text field that has content completion capability, so I can I can compose the value faster. Okay, so now we've reached the point of interest. I'm just going to add a new point of interest to see just how easy it is to work with these form controls. To do that, of course, I could use oXygen's content completion support, but instead I'll use this button form controls right here. So I'll just click add, and a new point of interest was added. So we're describing the capital of the island. Okay, so for the photo, I just browse. So here is the browsing form control. I missed so much, so I'm just selecting a photo. I click OK, and the document is again updated. Next, I just select the type. It's a town. It's a quite expensive one, and it's also reachable by any means of transportation. So I just click all items here. Again, the checkbox form control that allows me to compose a multiple value faster. One more thing, I also specify the facilities, and this one here is another pop-up form control, but this time we have multiple selection. I'll just click 3 of them and hit close. And so I've entered a new point of interest very fast. If I go into the XML, I see a lot of structure being inserted in the background for this point of interest. It was very easy for me to create it in author mode. Now, just in case I haven't convinced you on how great these form controls are, I have prepared another example, and it's a form. Okay, I need a project. Just close this one. Okay, so I've downloaded such a form. So I've selected an application to replace permanent resident card. It's an US official document, and it has a lot of form controls like checkboxes. It has date pickers, combo boxes, and so on. So now let's see how easy it would be for us to edit similar type of information in oXygen's author mode. Okay, so we go to oXygen, and I open this XML file. So this XML file contains the same kind of information, and we switch to author mode. And as you can see, it looks a lot similar, and it's equally easy to use. So we have checkboxes, again with the combo boxes. We have date pickers, some more combo boxes and checkboxes. Here I'm forced to select one, and so on. So it's just as easier to edit a form-oriented XML file in oXygen's author mode. Okay, so this concludes the user's perspective part of my demonstration. Next, we're going to take a look under the hood and see what it takes to add these form controls into your own custom XML document. So, adding form controls is easy. You just go to the CSS file. As I've told you, oXygen uses CSS rules to perform the layout and the formatting. And on the content property of such a rule, you just use these oXygen extension functions to add the form control. So you have Oxy text field if you want to add a text field. You have combo box if you want to add a combo box. There are quite a few built-in form controls. You have text fields, you have checkboxes. There's also a pop-up form control offering both single and multiple selection. You have date picker URL chooser, and my favorite, the button font control. Let's take a closer look at one of these functions. So the signature of such a function. Okay, we'll take the Oxy combo box. The arguments of the function are grouped into property name, property value pairs. Okay, let's see what property we have. First, there's the edit property, which is a mandatory property, and it basically tells Oxygen what kind of value you are editing. You could be either editing an attribute value, for example here I'm editing the currency attribute, or you could be editing the text content of an element, like this combo box, and you would use this predefined value. Next we have the editable property, which tells Oxygen if it should use an editable combo box, and the user is allowed to enter any custom value, or the combo box should be read-only and the user is thus forced to select an item from the pop-up. Now, normally the combo box font control will take its value from the schema, from the associated schema. But if such information it isn't available in the schema, then you can always specify these values right here in the CSS, and you do that using the values property. And the value of this property is a comma separated enumeration. Okay, and next we have the columns property, which basically enforces a fixed width for the combo box and allows you to create complex layouts using font controls, but I'll come back to this a bit later. Another interesting property is the labels property. It's also comma separated enumeration, and it allows you to associate a label with each value. So for example, I can say here use currency. Okay, I just saved the CSS and I reopen the XML file, reapply the font control style sheet, and now the currency combo box actually presents those two labels, but as I select an entry, the actual value being committed is the dollar value, so it's just a label. Okay, let's see, for example, if I want to, so I have here my point of interest, right? So what will it take for me to edit the phone using such a phone control, let's say a text field? Well, I just go to the CSS and I put a rule on the phone element, and on the content property I use the Oxy text field function. So we'll be editing the text content, and let's also impose a width a bit larger. Okay, save the CSS, go back to the XML, reload, and it's a bit larger. Okay, so now I have a text field that, to edit the text content, so I can just use it. You may also notice a bit of redundancy here. So I'm editing the text content of this element using a font control, but Oxygen also shows me by default this value here in the content. So normally if I add such a font control, I don't want this value to be presented anymore. So to do this, I go back to the CSS, and this time I'll use the visibility property, and I'll bind it to Oxy collapse text. This is another Oxygen extension value this time, and this basically tells Oxygen to hide the text. So we refresh, and now our font control, it's the only way you can actually edit the font. Okay. I also want to emphasize a bit on the button font control, which I told you it was my favorite. how many of you know about the author actions? How you configure an author action? No. There's a lot of you were at Prague last year. No, we had some demonstration there about the author action. I expected more hands. My friend Radu, I believe, presented to you the author actions. Okay, so an author action, you can configure this author action in preferences, document type association. You have here a framework for each type of document. We'll just pick one. I picked the travel guide. So you can configure all these actions for the author mode, and this action can perform all kind of operation. For example, I have here an action that inserts a fragment inside the document. Okay, so the button form control. So what the button form control actually does, and here is the Oxy button function, is that it links itself to such an author action. And this is very nice because it can very easily perform very complex structural changes in the document. And what's even more important is that actions that would normally only be available on the contextual menu or in the toolbar can be offered to the user right in the context where they are supposed to be used, and so they're easier to use and to discover. I've already shown you the buttons and what they can do. Okay. So I'll go back a bit to the form example. And I've also mentioned the columns property that you can set on a form control, and the fact that you can create complex layouts using this property. And I also should mention this new oXygen extension function is the Oxy Label Function, and what it actually does, it allows you to associate layout information with a piece of static text, of generated text. And using this Oxy Label Function and the columns property on a form control, you can perform complex layouts. Like, for example, in my form, it's sort of like a table layout. I have two columns, one with labels and one with form controls. But the actual XML structure, and if you take a look in the outline, you see that I don't have the normally required function for rendering a table using CSS. So you need the table layout, the row level, and the cell level. So you need 3 levels. But here I have only 2. But using this the Oxy label and the form controls, I can actually have a table-like layout. And for example, if I go to this label function, I have here the imposed width is 40% of the available space. I can say it to be a bit larger. I'll put 70. And if I go into the XML, now you see that the layout, it's a bit broken. The label is a lot larger, so it has pushed the form control on this other, actually, I'll better push the date picker here. Okay, so you see now the date picker is pushed to the right. So I can use, so the bottom point is that I can use this new Oxy Label function together with form controls and this columns property to create all kinds of layouts in the author mode. Okay. Now, as you can see, as you have seen, there are quite a few built-in form controls, but if these are not enough, you can always create your own custom form controls. And to do that, you have to download oXygen SDK, which is available at that link location. And you'll have to use the oXygen SDK API, which is Java based, and specifically this package over here. Then there are basically two interfaces that you need to implement: the in-place renderer and the in-place editor. So it's an architecture very similar to the one you'd encounter in a Java table or a tree on renderer editor architecture. And the reason for that is that, like I've shown you, just a second, a for control can look one way, like a label, but when an editing session is requested, it will be a different something different, like a list or anything. Of course, if your for controls actually looks, if it's like a text field, then probably the renderer and the editor will be the same component. Okay, so now assuming that you've implemented these two interfaces, the next step would be to go back to the CSS file and bind this newly created for control into the document. And you do that using the Oxy editor function. Let's take a look at its arguments. So first we have the renderer class name, and this is the class name. It is your class that you've implemented on the previous step, and this class has to implement the in-place renderer interface. And basically it will be asked for a Java AVT component that oXygen will paint in the context where that for control should appear. The next one, it's the swing editor class name. Again, this is your class that implements the in-place editor interface. It will also be asked for a Java AVT component that will be used when an editing session is requested. Now the next property, you'll only need this one if you intend your form control to be available in oXygen Eclipse plugin. So this SVT editor class name also has to be an implementation of the in-place editor interface, but this time it will be asked for an SVT control to handle the editing session. Next we have the edit property. The edit property, now if your form control actually finishes by updating an attribute value or the text document of an element, then you can always let oXygen do the document update. And you do that by using, like I said, this predefined value, the at and the attribute name, or the text, if you're editing the text content. But if your form control actually wants to perform more complex structural changes, then what you have to do is use the custom predefined value. And what will happen is that oXygen will restrain from trying to update the document, and instead will let the form control do the document update. And this is exactly what the guys at Delta XML are doing. They've implemented this very kind of document, and perhaps they'll also show it to you during the presentation a bit, if you're lucky. Okay, so next to this predefined properties, the Oxy editor function can receive any number of property name, property value pairs, and these properties will be passed to the custom form control, and it can perform differently based on their values. Okay, so thank you, and if you have any questions. Oh, that was fast.
I noticed that when you use the travel guide, suddenly there was a menu item on the top named travel guide. Is that controlled by the CSS as well?
No, that one is controlled by the document type. So you mean this one over here?
Yeah.
So I have created a document, document type of framework. You know what, the framework in oXygen for this type of document, and I've oXygen automatic, and I've so oXygen automatically generates this menu. This menu I can put actions in this menu and it's highly customizable. You can put all sorts of actions for the user to find out, to discover that.
But the CSS itself does not really change the behavior of oXygen as such.
Not at this level.
No.
To add a new.
So based on the information from the document and the rules you specify for the framework, you match on the namespace or on the root element. oXygen associates that framework with the document, and that framework can contribute to toolbar actions, menus, different things, and also a number of CSS style sheets. And then the framework gives you the style sheets, and you can switch between the different style sheets from that styles dropdown to change how the document looks like.
So if you want to find out more about frameworks in oXygen, and we can always talk afterwards.
My question is about when oXygen is going to give a visual tool to edit CSS. The next step.
George, would you like to answer that?
We had a discussion already about this.
Really?
We will think about this, and at least it will be useful to have like a set of rules that you can just map to different elements. You know, like we have a rule for a title or a rule for a section, and then it will be easier to create such as CSS section, even if you don't have, let's say, a visual, completely visual editor for CSS. But at least to have like to assign easily a predefined set of styles, let's say, for different elements. That would be the first step.
When?
So right now, as I said, next week we will have 14.2, probably in 15.
So if if you think a CSS visual editing tool is cool, just give us feedback on the support, and that will speed up the process.
Yes, is the overview, especially with the font controls, accessible for blind people and visually impaired people?
The accessibility part.
From time to time, we allocate about 2 weeks on the accessibility part, and we solve a number of issues. Even now, we had a potential order from a large customer, and they went to send us a report on oXygen. You need to look into this, and we tried and we fixed the critical parts for 14.2 from that report, and we moved the others for the next version. So we try to work also on this part as much as we can. We try to make it work with JAWS, so with the screen reader from the Mac and things like that. There's still some work. There are some parts probably that do not work yet as expected, but we are working on this.
We used one of our recent products, the same author. We integrated as a web application by using Applet, and it works absolutely fine. When it looks as a non-XML user, they can do whatever stuff, which is good. But the problem is, a couple of things we got a feedback. One is, for example, schema validation. Let's say they have 10 paragraphs. Our schema allows to have only 10 paragraphs. Now, when XML, by using author, person adds all the 10 paragraphs, it gives a strange message in XML way. They are not able to have 11 paragraphs. We again customized by our own way, put a available messages like
Schematron and such. Okay.
The problem is, we did everything bespoke. Basically, the author allows to do something which is not by schema, but it still allows. So, is there any way, instead of a warning-based author, we put a strict-based? Suppose if they want to enter 11th paragraph, instead of giving a message, just stop there, in a strict mode, the author itself, so that
so-called pre-validations, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the auto mode doesn't allow you to insert, to specify 2 paragraphs, and we have an option in the auto mode which is schema-aware editing, and that will not show as available. The user you cannot really enter
If the schema doesn't allow it.
If you specify two sections in the schema with the author mode, you cannot enter the third. If the author is set in schema aware, which is the default.
So
Unless you change that, you know, and, then the users are able to enter.
So by default, the schema aware mode is enabled, and the user, like George said, wouldn't be allowed to insert invalid content if the schema doesn't allow it.
Actually, basically, what we do really is that we try to keep the same level of error or validation, let's say. If you have invalid content, what you insert do not create more errors. Because if the document is already invalid, let's say, when you open it, then the user should be able to work, right? But what he inserts should not create
invalid content.
More invalid document. Should be the same, let's say. But if you have this enabled, they should not be able to enter another session, as you said, section. And you can control this, if you use the component, you can control the option, make sure you have this option set on that application.
So if there aren't any more questions, then probably let my colleague take over.